Viewers, trust you are good from wherever you are watching. My name is Reverend Father Desmond Chigozeuzo of the Catholic Diocese of Okigwe. Welcome you to DCTv. Today we shall be looking into politics in Nigeria and how it affects Imo State. We have in our midst a three-time governorship candidate, a lawyer, public administrator, a one-time acting speaker of Imo State, thread representative in America from 2000 to 2006. He is a prolific writer and author of several books in the person of Honorable IKE C. Honorable, you are welcome.
Thank you very much, Father.
You are a well-known politician in Imo State and Nigeria in general. Could you tell us a bit of your background, political influence, and experience?
Well, first of all, I was born about 55 years ago in IKE C, Imo State. Well, I attended school the same time with my mates. I went to IBEH High School, well, local high school, and government college, Umuahia. Then went to Imo State University, where I studied law, graduated in 1987, then went to Nigerian Law School and qualified as a barrister and solicitor in 1988. Of course, I later on acquired my master's degree from American University in Washington, D.C., specializing in international petroleum and energy law. Then thereafter, I've been in active legal practice, and at some point I branched into political participation. 1991, I was elected into Imo State House of Assembly, where at some point towards the end of my career, I was elected the Speaker of the House of Assembly. When that republic was truncated, I went back to private legal practice and businesses here and there, and went into exile in the US after Abacha came in, because I was one of those targeted because of my outspokenness during the period. And then at some point, I contested for a run to be a senator in Okigwe zone, which wasn't successful. And I've been a governorship candidate, like introduced, a number of times in Imo State. And I've been actively engaged in political development as well as developing, my philanthropy activities and the business across the place. That's who IKE C is. Currently, I'm laid back politically a little bit after the last governorship election, but I'm also the chairman of the forum of all past legislators in Imo State, and also the convener of all former elected public officials in Nigeria. So right now, that is my brief profile.
Okay. After your most recent attempt to clinch the #1 political position in Imo State, people are not sure the political divide you belong. Do you seem to have withdrawn from the active party politics to political analysis and mentorship?
Yes, you're very correct. For now, I term myself as being in political sabbatical, but I'm still politically active. But right now, I don't belong to any political party. For now, I'm watching political developments with keen interest, and hopefully in the near future, I will pinch my tent again with a political party and see where we go from there.
Thank you, Honorable. APGA was almost destroyed in Imo State after last election. People are no longer sure if you are still a member. Could you please tell us the situation of things in APGA?
Yes, APGA, the story of APGA in Imo State and indeed in Nigeria is a very unfortunate story. APGA once represented the political spirit of the Igbo man. APGA was making so much progress. APGA had a governor in Imo State. APGA was in control of a House of Assembly in Imo State. APGA was virtually in control of House of Assembly of Abia State. APGA had the House of Assembly control sometime in Nasarawa State. APGA had the local government chairman in Abuja. APGA had assembly members in Taraba. APGA had, a lot of potentials. But unfortunately, towards the lead up to 2019 governorship elections across the country, well, a few years before then, ABGA fell into the hands of people I call political operators who were more interested in building their pockets as opposed to building ABGA as a brand that it was before. Because of that, ABGA became totally destroyed. A lot of things went wrong in the process of nomination of candidates. There was a lot of shenanigans, and ABGA that was seen as a beautiful bride in both 2015 and 2019 governorship elections became destroyed because of the activities of the leaders of the party, especially at the national level. People expected that ABGA would win governorship of Imo State in 2019 and governorship of Abia State in 2019 and also governorship of Nasarawa State. But unfortunately, because of the way the party leaders managed the affairs of the party became so polarized and so destroyed. And, it has become a shadow of itself. ABGA that was once a vibrant Igbo party is now been reduced to a factionalized party that, right now we don't even know who is the national chairman of ABGA. There are two contending national chairmen of ABGA, one from Anambra State, one from Imo State, and the same way they have factions of the party at all the different state levels. And they are continuously in litigation all the way up to the Supreme Court. ABGA has had a series of legal matters, and it's still going, and it's probably going to be endless. The only thing we believe that can save the party and it becomes vibrant again is if the current managers of the party, that is the current leaders of the party at the national level, step aside or go away to give way to fresh leadership for the party, and so that the party can begin to build new potentials. But right now, ABGA seems to be a party in the cold room.
Could you also lecture us on why the party is important for the Igbos? Is this party still strong enough to win election in Imo State and Nigeria today?
For now, it is not. But if the party is repositioned, if we go back to the spirit of the founding fathers, if we go back to the philosophy of the founders of the party that represented the future and the stability of the Igbo race, then it can come back, but not with the present crop of officials that the party has at the national level. Because the party leaders at the national level have become so compromised over the years. And their compromise have led to factionalization of the party and disillusionment of members of the party. Except there is a drastic change in leadership of the party will not do anything meaningful for now. But once there's that change, and there's a new committed, vibrant leadership, the party still has potentials to go places. A lot of Igbos believe in the party. They call it their own. That's the slogan of the party. The party has the potential of coming back to what it used to be, but not with the present leadership.
Political parties are structures for attaining political power. In advanced democracies, political parties are formed along ideology. But in Nigeria, political parties are seen as mere vehicles of attaining political power and political appointments. This gives rise to incessant dumping of one political party for another. Does this have any adverse effects on governance in Nigeria?
Definitely it does. Parties traditionally are supposed to be built on ideologies. People who have similar ideologies flock to the same party.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, in Nigeria, political parties are seen merely as vehicles to get into power, not as institutions that build ideology, not as institutions that make policy, not as institutions that develop the society and develop the nation by extension. So in the case of Nigeria, over the years, people move from one party to other. And basically the reason why they move, one, is when you don't have what you call internal democracy in a political party, when democracy in a political party is hinged on primordial considerations, hinged on nepotistic considerations, hinged on financial considerations, people who are not favored, who feel that there's injustice. For instance, when parties hold primaries are supposed to be free and fair, which leads to free and fair general elections. But in most of these parties, there are selections of candidates as opposed to nomination of candidates. And when people who are selected get disgruntled, they tend to move away to different parties. This has, to a large extent destroyed political parties in the country. That has led to continuous cross-carpeting. Of course, some politicians will say, well, making an analogy, if you want to travel to Lagos, for instance, and go to the motor park and enter a bus, and the bus you entered into gets to Shagamu and breaks down, and you must be in Lagos, you find another bus and enter the bus and get to Lagos. Under normal circumstances, a bus, may not break down if it is serviced properly, if it has a good driver, if the roads are good. The same thing with political parties. If the managers are good, if there's internal democracy and all that, there won't be all these problems. But as long as these problems exist, people will continue to cross-carpet. And of course, that delves into the freedom of association we have enshrined in our constitution. People are free to move to where they want, but there'll be less movement if the parties are stable. And if the parties adopt internal democracy as their mantra.
Could the Nigerian electoral system be of any help in reducing political cross-carpeting or the camping of politicians from one party to another?
Well, yes and no. Yes, in the sense that if the Electoral Act provides that you cannot cross-carpet, then it becomes part of the law. And of course, if you are elected on the platform of a political party and you leave that party and join another party, you are supposed to lose the position you got elected into. Only on the condition that if there is a crisis in the party, if the party has become factionalized, then somebody is free to leave the party that elected him and go into another party. But on the other hand, like I said earlier on, Nigeria's constitution provides for freedom of association. Nothing can limit anybody from moving from one party to another, and except there's a constitutional amendment backed by an electoral act that says you cannot, once you cross carpet, you lose your position. Until those things are done, cross carpeting will continue to happen. At some point in our history, there was a legislation that brought in two political parties on ideological level. The then military president Babangida, decreed the creation of two political parties based on ideologies. One SDP that they called a little to the left, and one NRC they called a little to the right. And then people went and joined these parties based on their interests. But it wasn't really based on ideologies because, you find out that people don't really play politics in Nigeria based on ideologies. But if we want to get it right, and if we want to make this legal, then there has to be some legislations and enactments. And of course, when issues come up based on these legislations and when they go to the judiciary or to the courts have to be independent and fair-minded enough to rule in accordance to the spirit of the law. Laws are made for man. Man are not made for law. But unfortunately, in our society, it appears as if man is made for law, as opposed to law being made for man.
How could you evaluate Nigerian electoral system? Is it getting better or becoming worse?
Nigerian electoral system is actually, if there is a word harsher than worse, I would like to use it. We have a terrible political system. And it's not merely because there are no laws. There are laws, but most of these laws are observed more in breach, than in practice. Our electoral systems, our election processes keep getting from bad to worse. Every cycle of election comes with its variables. In Nigeria, 2019 election was better than 2015 elections were better than 2019 elections. The elections before 2015, 2011 was better than 2015. And I anticipate that 2023 elections will be a watershed in political destabilization in electoral malpractice and so on. Because if you see what is happening now with elected officials, the way they are dissipating natural and national resources, as if this money will finish tomorrow, packing this money for what they will do in 2023 is very scary. It is only the strong-hearted that can participate in elections in 2023 in this country. I believe, except a miracle happens, I believe 2023 elections will be worse and bloody, much more than the 2019 elections. We don't pray for that, we don't hope for that, but with the realities on the ground, it appears that the elections of 2023, will be very tough elections, especially with the issues of ethnicity, security challenges, and all kinds of things pervading the society. It is very scary what 2023 elections will be in Nigeria.
The issue of electronic voting was a top issue before and after 2019 general election, but suddenly no one hears of it again. Do you share in the view that electronic voting will reduce the rate of malpractice in Nigerian election? And what do you think is preventing Nigeria from going for full electronic voting?
Yes, electronic voting was actually introduced to ensure that the electoral processes are fair and free and credible. Because the essence is once you vote, your vote is transmitted immediately, and the results are announced at each point. That is the essence of electronic voting.
Okay.
But we all see that it hasn't worked. Now, the reason why they haven't worked are because there are intentional roadblocks put by those who have the responsibility of making these things work. Sometimes you hear the voting machines don't count, don't work. Some places you hear they're not available. Some places you hear there are no batteries to power them. Some places you see that there's no light to power them and all those things. Like I said earlier on, the problem is not in laws. We have laws, just like the Electoral Act that introduced the electronic voting. But it is the implementation of these laws, these regulations that matter. There is, there are interests that always come to play, and you also see that in Nigeria, people who are supposed to preach some of these changes, some of these electoral changes, or some of these amendments that will make the society a better society, most times they are not interested in doing that because the changes they preach will catch up with their frauds. We catch up with their the way they destroy the society and they find themselves into office. So if we make conscious efforts to implement the provisions of our laws, including the provisions that mandated use of electronic voting. Electronic register also is a component of electronic voting. But when these things are not made available because of obvious selfish interests of those in positions to implement these things, that is why they don't work. The provisions are there, the laws are there, but the implementations of these laws is what matters. If we have electronic voting implemented properly, votes will count and the votes will be counted. And when votes count and votes are counted, you have good results, And that is also why elections in Nigeria are very expensive, because people who run for this office, or most people, they don't really care about whether you vote or not, because they wait at the point of manipulation. And they use money to manipulate the system. And when you use money to manipulate the system, the outcome of the system is always disastrous. Unfortunately, most of our political office holders or elected officials and all that, they don't really care whether the process works or not. And when they introduce changes, they make sure they put roadblocks on the ways of these changes so that they don't work because of what they do in the system.